Good morning and welcome to First Congregational United Church of Christ here in Ocala, Florida. We welcome you to our online worship services available on, YouTube and Facebook. First Congregational United Church of Christ here in Ocala, Florida is an open and affirming church, meaning that no matter who you are, no matter where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here into our life, our love, our responsibilities, our leadership, our hopes and dreams for all the years. This makes the 65th video that I've produced so far during the pandemic. I'm really getting tired of this pandemic. We had a big meeting of our church council yesterday to discuss whether or not to open. We agreed a long time ago that we would follow the recommendations of the CDC, the Communicable Disease Center in Atlanta, Georgia. And it's awfully tempting not to reverse ourselves on that decision some time back. But we've decided to stay the course. We feel that your church council feels that it is the responsible thing to do. That in the hierarchy of priorities, we just simply must make public safety our first concern. A different kind of sermon this week. A lot of history, a lot of biblical history. Certainly not covering everything, but the title of today's sermon is Apocalypse Now, with a question mark. And it draws on the wisdom and the witness of two sections of our scriptural heritage, the book of Daniel from the Hebrew Scriptures and the book of Revelation from the Christian Scriptures. These scripture lessons or readings will be opaque on their being heard. They will be unfolded in the sermon. From the book of Daniel, God is speaking. Michael, the great prince, the protector of your people, shall arise. There shall be a time of anguish, such as never occurred since nations first came into existence. But at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Such beautiful poetic language. But you, Daniel, keep these words secret, and the book sealed until the time of the end. Many shall be running back and forth, and evil shall increase. Now Daniel responds, Then I, Daniel, looked, and two others appeared, one standing on the bank of the stream and one on the other. One of them said to the man clothed in linen who was upstream, How long shall it be until the end of these wonders? The man clothed in linen who was upstream raised his right hand and his left hand towards heaven. And I heard him swear by the one who lives forever that it would be for a time, 2 times, and half a time, and that when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things shall be accomplished. I heard but could not understand, so I said, My Lord, what shall be the outcome of these things? And he said, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are to remain secret and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall be purified, cleansed, and refined, but the wicked shall continue to act wickedly. None of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand. from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away and the abomination that desolates is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Happy are those who persevere and attain the 1,335 days. But you, Daniel, go your way and rest. You shall rise for your reward at the end of the days. This is apocalyptic language, talking about the end of days. More on that during the sermon. Now for a reading from the Christian Scriptures, the book of Revelation, 17th chapter. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great whore, who is seated on many waters." Now I should let you know that the great whore is referring to Rome, okay? The great whore is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and with the wine of whose fornication the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk. So he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her fornication. Again, we're referring to Rome. And on her forehead was written a name, a mystery, Babylon. Babylon the Great, mother of whores and of earth's abominations. And I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints of God and the blood of the witnesses to Jesus. When I saw her, I was horrified. But the angel said to me, "Why are you so horrified? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to ascend from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will be horrified when they see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come." Again, apocalyptic language, just like in Daniel. And then Revelation's the 21st verse. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. This refers to after the end of time, after the apocalypse. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, and prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them as their God. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away," the time before the apocalypse. And the one who was seated on the throne said, "See, I am making all things new." Also he said, "Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true." And he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water as a gift from the springs of the water of life. Those who conquer will inherit these things, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, the murderers, the fornicators, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death." Ooh. This is Again, apocalyptic imagery. And it's not particularly appealing, you know. It's not. Shall we work together to discern the nature of God from within these stories? Friends, listen. God is still speaking, and we are still listening. Well, Barnes and Noble sells a lot of apocalyptic literature. And given today's world, little wonder why. So, what's the apocalypse? Well, here's a quick definition. Some point in time in the future, when God will step in and violently clean house, and the good people will dwell in the heart and mind of God, and everybody else is going to go straight to hell. Apocalyptic literature appears in code all through the Bible, and it requires a good bit of deciphering. The Bible holds a lot of it, and some of the most important with the book of Daniel. Okay, you got to stick with me on this, all right? The first half of Daniel contains stories about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Nebuchadnezzar, and the great statue, Belshazzar's feast, the handwriting on the wall, and of course, Daniel in the lion's den, which is a favorite of great artists. Now, these stories are woven together into a story about the Babylonian captivity when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon invaded Judah and destroyed the Jerusalem temple and carted most everybody, not everybody, but most everybody off into captivity in Babylon. It continues that Daniel, a Judean from Jerusalem, refused to worship the Babylonian gods and survived every punishment to eventually come out on top. The point being that even in captivity, Jews can hold on to Jehovah's law. Well, let's back up a little bit. Like I said, these stories supposedly are about the Babylonian captivity, but in fact they are not. Daniel was written in the 2nd century, 400 years after the Babylonian captivity. Like I said, it's a little complex, so hang on. In the year 200 before the Common Era, Alexander the Great conquered the entire eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. And wherever Alexander went, he took Greek culture and Hellenized everything he conquered. Even after he died, the Greek culture stuck around, which isn't all bad, you know. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, names ring a bell. But for Jews, Hellenism, in other words, Greek culture, was extremely harmful because many Jews abandoned Judaism to the more relaxed way of Greek living. Now, after Alexander died, the eastern Mediterranean was ruled by the Seleucids, S-E-L-E-U-C-I-D-S, Seleucids in Syria. Another part by the P-T-O-L-E-M-Y-S. How am I going to say that? Ptolemies in Egypt. Okay, so you got the Seleucids in Syria and the Ptolemies in Egypt, and they hated each other's guts. And Judah was caught right in the middle. Judah caught right smack geographically between the two. And what Judah did is sometimes it allied itself with one of those powers, and sometimes with the other. Well, around 175 years before the Common Era, Antiochus IV ascended to the Seleucid throne, calling himself, get this, the Messiah. But insane, cruel fruitcake is a more accurate description, at least if you're saying it behind his back. He is remembered to dance naked at parties, spied on his friends, and killed anybody on a whim, whether they had anything coming or not. Well, even though Assyrian by nationality, Antiochus was gaga over Greece and wanted to Hellenize everybody, whether they wanted it or not. In every city in his realm, including Jerusalem, he erected statues and temples to Greek gods, theaters for Greek plays. He even tried to change the language. And lots of Jews just loved it. They just loved Hellenism. They loved Greek life and they bought it lock, stock, and barrel. Even the high priest in Jerusalem curtailed evening temple rituals so that he could watch athletic events. Antiochus successfully Hellenized Jerusalem and much of Judaism. So what's the problem? All this sophisticated Hellenic art, theater, literature, and wisdom? Well, I'll tell you. Jews began feeling the laws of their own Jewish faith not just inconvenient, but embarrassing. For example, all those finicky food preparation rules, keeping the Sabbath. So Jews, many of them, soon stopped observing their traditions. In short, they sort of turned a blind eye to their own faith. It all came to a head in the year 168 before the Common Era, when Antiochus picked a fight with the Ptolemies. Gosh, I wish I could say that word. Ptolemys. Ptolemies. In other words, Antiochus picked a fight with the group in Egypt. Down through Palestine he marched to attack Egypt. But on his arrival in Egypt, the Ptolemy army stood behind a Roman army led by General Pompilius, with whom the Ptolemies had cut a deal. And General Pompilius approached Antiochus, and he said something like this: "You know, Antiochus, let me offer you a friendly word of advice. Get on your horse. Go home." And right there, Antiochus says, "I'll give it some thought." Whereupon Pompilius calmly walked over to Antiochus, and he took his sword and he drew a circle in the dust around him, and he says, "That's fine. Take whatever time you need. Just make up your mind before you leave this circle." At which point all of his troops took their spears and went boom, and pointed them at him. Well, what can Antiochus do? Can he whoop the Ptolemies? Probably, maybe, who knows, but Rome? No way. So Pompilius turns his army around, packs up, and heads back north towards Syria, completely, publicly humiliated. And on his way back to Syria, guess where he had to travel? Through Judea. And he was furious, seething with rage. And he stops in Jerusalem and he unleashes his fury on the Jews, plundering the temple treasure, forbidding observing the Sabbath, and murdering anyone who even dares to look sideways. He intended in this moment to wipe out Judaism altogether. What happened then? All hell broke loose. And Judas Maccabeus, a Jew, led a terrible, bloody revolt against Antiochus, but more than just Antiochus, against Hellenism, against Greek life, and against those Jews who had bought into Hellenism. Well, guess what? Surprise. Judas Maccabeus won, defeating the Syrians and killing thousands of Hellenized Jews in the process. Today, Jews celebrate this victory during Hanukkah. So, the stories from Daniel that passed themselves off long ago were really about something in the present. In a nutshell, Daniel insisted that whoever sticks to the law of Jehovah will endure and triumph. But here's the rub. It wasn't a shoo-in that they would win by themselves. And here's where things get ugly. While the first half of Daniel calls Jews to remain faithful to God's laws, the second half asks God to step in and to take over and to clean house. Because, maybe being faithful just by itself, maybe that just isn't enough. And so Daniel wanted God's direct intervention to save Judah, this time not with a flood or killing Egyptian babies and armies, but by destroying anything not Jewish that Daniel figured ought to be Jewish. In other words, Daniel petitioned God to invoke an apocalypse, God's divine wrath on the unrighteous, more powerful than mere faith, repentance, and prayer. Well, I don't believe in Daniel's God. Maybe you do, but I don't. But if the book of Daniel, if the behavior of Daniel, asking God to step in and to wipe out anything that Daniel didn't want, the book of Revelations from the Christian scriptures makes Daniel look tame. Revelations chapters 6 through 20 are just full of invective, torture, wrath, and destruction, saying, when Jesus returns, anybody who God didn't write into the book of life from the beginning of time will be cast into the fires of hell. Well, I don't believe in that God either. Maybe you do, but I don't. But just like in Daniel's time, the situation was awful. Only this time it wasn't Greek power, Greek thought, Greek life. It wasn't Hellenism. It was the Roman Empire. Like Daniel, Revelation refers to Babylon as the mother of all whores. But in Revelations, Babylon was code for Rome. You may remember the code word 666, right? 666. It probably refers to the sum of the letters of Caesar's full name. Pontus, Pontus, that's 6. Julius, Julius, 6. Caesar, Caesar, 666. Pontus Julius Caesar. In any event, Revelations is just like Daniel, a response to the times. And what are we supposed to do with this apocalyptic literature? Well, we could go along with a God of wrath. I don't believe in that God. Maybe you do. I don't. On the other hand, we can read beneath the times to understand that believing in a God of wrath is a stage that believers go through in order to understand God as a God of hope. Got to do some work on this. No doubt, the Jews felt incapable of surviving alone. They both wanted and needed an ally to protect them. And Daniel offered hope when they doubted their faith could make any difference. So Daniel looked to an earlier time, the Babylonian captivity, when the Jews had remained faithful and they had survived. They did it once, they could do it again. If they trusted that if they remained faithful, so would God. Picturing God as a monster is awful. But I understand Daniel's aim. Don't agree with it, but I understand it. Same for Revelations, a couple of centuries later. An effort to sustain hope and impart courage. Listen to these beautiful words. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither mourning nor crying nor pain anymore. In short, the authors of both Daniel and Revelations had to work through their rage and through their lost hope to make way for new hope. And today, this day, I fully understand why they needed a God of wrath to make their way to a God of hope. I understand because of the millions of poor, trampled people who feel that their faith is useless because Babylon and Rome, code words for their government, don't care two bits about them. They really do try to be faithful. But why bother? Why bother? What good is faith? What is accomplished by faith? Let me ask you, if you made minimum wage, and if you had to make a choice between medicine for your children or paying your rent, if your children faced 2 congressional bills calling for a military draft, if you had to pay more of a percentage of your income than another citizen of your country because you're poor and they are wealthy, if you had to beg at the door of our church for food and shelter, if you were told who you should or shouldn't love, honor, and cherish, be honest with yourself. wouldn't you be even the tiniest bit tempted to sell your soul for a God of wrath? Sometimes these days, that's exactly how I feel. Because at the heart of apocalyptic thinking is despair. Despair that justice and equality are fantasies. And our best bet is to latch on to a God of wrath, which licenses imitating that God of wrath, which truly is an apocalypse. But Jesus calls us to live by faith, to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, knowing that God is with us, will comfort us, will restore our souls, and that neither depression nor despair have the last word. Dead opposite to apocalyptic thinking. Because while apocalyptic thinking does look for a final resolution of our troubles, the God of true faith says, if you want heaven on earth, get yourself some bricks and build it. I'll be the cement. Apocalyptic thinking looks for an exemption from trouble. Mature faith looks for a way through, not a way out of trouble. Jesus never looked for a way around the cross, some exemption, some dispensation, and never sought vengeance on a world that rejected him and made him suffer. Jesus never sought his way around the cross. He sought his way through the cross. And at that apocalyptic moment when he said, Father, why have you abandoned me? Papa, why have you abandoned me, your son? When by every natural instinct he had the right to tell the world and to God to go to hell, his apocalypse now evaporated with his final words, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Today's sermon title is Apocalypse Now, as a question. The mature Christian faith says the apocalypse is your choice. You pick your God. You pick, on the one hand, a God of wrath, on the other hand, a God of hope. And you live your life with the one you choose. For those of you who feel loss and despair, I pray that you will choose the God of hope. Friends, this is not a pep rally. And if these words of mine come off Pollyanna-ish, just shoot me. Let us all try our best to live by the grace of Jesus Christ, who placed his faith in God's love, the God of life. Friends, the God of wrath will not save you, will not save you, never has, never will. Choose love, choose hope, choose life. And God shall wipe away all tears from your eyes, and death shall be no more, neither mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore. Choose the God of hope. Amen.